Hello and welcome to India's World. Today we are going to discuss President Barack Obama's request to the US Congress for an authorization for the use of military force against the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, or ISIS. In the United States, combat military operations lasting longer than 6 months require a congressional declaration of war or an authorization for the use of military force, also known as AUMF. American airstrikes against Islamic State in Iraq began on August 8, 2014 and in Syria a month later on September 22nd. Since then, the US has launched 1,900 airstrikes in both Iraq and Syria. These airstrikes have relied on the congressional authorization of 2001 and 2002 as their legal justification. Now President Obama has sought an explicit new act of Congress which would be specific to the Islamic State. To discuss the American President's new request for authorization of war against the Islamic State, we have with us a very distinguished panel of experts. We have with us Ambassador Meera Shankar, a distinguished diplomat. She was India's ambassador to the United States, the second woman to occupy that position after Vijay Lakshmi Pandit. Earlier, she was also ambassador of India in Berlin. And we have with us Ambassador Ranjit Singh Kalha. He was former secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs, has served as India's ambassador to Iraq and to Indonesia. And we have with us our old friend Dr. Awwad. He is the chief of bureau of the Syrian Arab news agency SANA in New Delhi. I welcome all of you to this discussion. Ambassador Shankar, let me begin with you. Why did the US President require a new authorization for war against the Islamic State when they have already conducted 1,900 of the total 2,300 odd airstrikes in Syria and Iraq? These airstrikes, as we know, were carried under previous authorization, 2001 authorization against terrorism that came in the wake of 9/11, and the 2002 Iraq war authorization. So why a new authorization now?
I think when President Obama began action against ISIS, he, was put under pressure by Congress to seek an authorization from the Congress. And later, in principle, he also agreed that he will seek an authorization from the Congress. And 6 months, of course, the operations have been conducted without that authorization. Now he has approached Congress for bipartisan support for this authorization of the use of military force against ISIS. And at the same time, he has withdrawn the earlier authorization. I mean, this resolution seeking the use of military force against ISIS withdraws the earlier authorization of the use of military force in Iraq of 2002. It also seeks to put some limits in terms of time and in terms of the kind of operations.
Okay. Can I take that question to Ambassador Kalha? So why does the new authorization put limits, as Ambassador Meera Shankar said, on military operations, saying that they will last only 3 years? Why does it curtail the use of ground troops by not authorizing what Obama calls enduring offensive ground troop operations? Is Obama therefore not asking Congress to curtail presidential powers, the powers of the commander-in-chief?
Basically, I think you have to look at it in two ways. One, of course, he is looking at his domestic audience when he made this particular suggestion to the US Congress. Yeah. The second is the ground realities as far as the Middle East and the Iraq situation is concerned. Obviously, the United States does not want ground troops to be stationed in Iraq. They have some ground troops, but they don't want them to enter into combat. Because you see, once you enter into combat, the fear is that they will get sucked in little by little, as they did in other what they call situations.
But he's allowing some boots on the ground, but saying they will not enter into enduring offensive, no long-term war. But short-term ground operations are permitted under the new authorization.
Short-term only those which are conducted by special operations. In fact, if you notice very carefully, he has ruled out the use of ground troops exclusively. He says, yes, if a situation does arise and it is possible that there are some hostile elements who are situated at a particular point, we may conduct special operations. But that is a very carefully calibrated response. It is no way give you any suggestion that they will use ground troops to eliminate ISIS.
So these restrictions?
That's part of the dilemma that he's facing in Congress, because the Republicans want to have a resolution with fewer restraints. Yeah. And the Democrats say that the restraints are too vaguely worded and you could have mission creep. So I suppose they'll have to find some via media between these two approaches.
We're going to discuss that in greater detail in a bit. But Dr. Awwad, do you think President Obama's dilemma is really that on the one hand, he's been keen to extricate America from any long drawn-out war overseas and limit presidential powers to launch such wars, and on the other hand, he himself has made use of that power and authority which he inherited from President George W. Bush. Not only did he inherit that authority, he also expanded it.
Well, I think one has to see the American public opinion that you have to repeal really what's the American mindset of the military, and industry is willing to go for war from one place to another, creating a mobile anarchy. What President Obama started his campaign that he will pull American troops and no forces on the ground, started now to be a more smaller, shifting it to another places like in Syria. It may be expanded because no boundaries. It can go to Jordan, it can go to Lebanon, it may go to Yemen. So there is no boundaries, and using the terminology of enduring and it is offensive or the ground forces, it's just a matter of really exposing the reality of the American president one after the other. It makes no difference. For us in the Arab world, we see the American Obama president has killed more than George Bush have killed really during his tenure.
So what you're saying is the war will continue, but for domestic audience they will claim that it's been restricted and there are limits on it. Is
Absolutely. See, this is the thing we have to address, the pink elephant in the ground room. If it is the global room. It is here the fact. The American cost them $5 billion to create ISIS, $10 billion to make a propaganda, $500 billion they raised to Saudi Arabia and Qatar to pay the bill. This is a profitable business. So why they have to stop the war?
All right. Ambassador Shankar, you said that the 2002 Iraq-specific authorization for military operations will be withdrawn once this authorization is approved. However, the 2001 authorization against Al-Qaeda and terrorists and their ilk will remain. So doesn't that allow the US president to conduct a global war against terrorists, including ISIS?
Well, the Al-Qaeda one is more targeted at Al-Qaeda.
No, it says terrorists.
Yeah, it says a global war on terror.
Yeah.
I think for ISIS, the president is seeking to both, I think two contradictory impulses, to both wage war and to limit it. It's not limited geographically in scope in terms of the resolution, but there is the phrase, it will not permit or it will prohibit US armed forces to be used in, as you said, enduring offensive combat operations. So nobody knows what this means, what this limitation means in practice.
But do you agree with Dr.
And
Awwad?
it's also limited in terms of time. It's valid only for 3 years. So I think what he's doing is to take an open-ended Iraq resolution and extend it, but placing certain limits on the use of presidential power, because they are worried about being sucked into another long drawn out situation like Afghanistan or like their earlier intervention in Iraq.
But do you agree with Dr. Awwad that for the Arabs it doesn't really matter? For them it's war, so 3 years or 2 years or whether it extends to 4 years doesn't really make a difference to those who are in the war zone.
Actually, in reality, you find that the ground situation is highly unlikely to change. It's likely to remain the same. There will be more bombings, there will be more limited action, but there will be no ground troops. Basically, what Mr. President Obama is doing is he's just clearing the ground for further, for his domestic audience. And secondly, don't forget that his term is just short of 2 years. So the bulk of what he's doing now, or the brunt of it, will be faced by his successor.
Okay, all right. We need to take a break at this point. We'll be back again soon. Stay with us.
In the Maths Factor, we travel through time and space and see how maths has evolved and how it is a part of the world around us. Join us on Rajya Sabha Television. Watch the Maths Factor every Sunday at 8 AM.
दुनिया का हाल राजनीति की चाल, बिजनेस की रफ्तार, खेल का धमाल। दिन की शुरुआत खबरों के साथ। देखिए हर रोज सुबह 9 बजे सिर्फ राज्यसभा टीवी पर।
Welcome back. We're discussing US President Barack Obama seeking congressional authorization for military operations, limited military operations on the ground against the Islamic State. Dr. Awwad, there are already thousands of US troops in Iraq, but they're there to augment US facilities, protect them, train and advise Iraqi military. The new authorization allows for limited troops on the ground, basically for greater coordination in airstrikes and for special operations if you have to go and attack ISIS leadership if they're gathered somewhere, etc., which is what President Obama has said. So limited ground operations will begin. So what is the significance of these operations?
Look, I would be naive to believe that the Americans seriously are fighting the IS. The American, if you go a little back in the history of 2007, the Chief of the Army Staff, Wensley Clark, he has said very clearly that the United States will invade 7 countries, including Syria, Iraq, Yemen, Libya, and Iran as well.
Invade for the sake of invasion.
It is destabilizing the region. So therefore, the war, proxy war, which started on Syria for the last 4 years, which now we are in the 4th year completions of the attack on Syria by a proxy neighbor like the NATO allies, Turkey and by Jordan, but from Qatar and Saudi Arabia funding. Now you have to have a de facto war on Syria.
But
it's a regime change.
In your narrative, Syria has done nothing wrong. In your narrative, nobody's done anything wrong except America.
This is the same president where the American president received him. This is the same president that the French received at the Champs-Élysées, even the Britishers. It is the same president where Turkish president used to go and have coffee with him along with the Emir of Qatar. Now, because their interests have changed, we don't have to change ourselves. Is this a sovereign nation, the elected president by the people of Syria? It is our right to decide our future.
Fair enough, but you're still not answering my question. Why do you need ground troops for airstrike coordination and for special ops?
It is a matter of a regime change. They cannot fight IS if you don't have coordination on the ground. And the true fighters of IS is Iraqi army, the Syrian army, and the Peshmerga of the Kurdish. These are the 3 people who is fighting. Unless and until you coordinate. Now there are 2 scenarios to this, Bharat. Either one has to believe that the United States is really truly wanted to finish the ISIS, and that the deal with Ukraine in the US and Russia is really true, is not a ploy. Then we can see that the Americans really are fighting the IS truly. But the other scenario which we see it in the Arab world is that the Americans are least interested is really in getting rid of the IS. Americans create the crisis and they manage it. They do not find a solution to it.
Ambassador Kalha, do you think that this authorization shows that President Obama has finally heeded the advice of his military generals that without ground forces, even if it's a limited use of US ground forces, ISIS cannot be defeated? That the Iraqi army is weak and the sectarian nature of the Iran-sponsored militants is such that unless US ground troops are used in some form or the other, the fight against Islamic State cannot be effective.
You see, it's fairly obvious that the Iraqi army is basically a Shiite-led army. In fact, whatever the successes they've had so far have been because of the Shiite militia. And the other problem which they face is that as and when they take any area or occupy any area, all the Sunnis in that area just simply vanish. They run away. So that would indicate to you that this sectarian aspect of the warfare is still very acute, and it's still not been able to resolve this issue. They hope by having ground handlers or ground controllers, perhaps they can limit the kind of atrocities that follow any occupation of any city or any town. Secondly, don't forget, this is an old tried method which the Americans are using. They used it in the first Gulf War, particularly when protecting the Kurdish areas from Saddam Hussein. They followed exactly the same pattern. they followed the same pattern in Afghanistan. When they first intervened in Afghanistan, it was special troops, ground controllers, and then they left the bulk of the fighting to be done by the local forces. So it's a very well tried and trusted method. It's not something which is new or new innovation or something new which has come about in the region.
Okay. Ambassador Shankar, do you think that even the limited presence of US troops on the ground, possibly with Jordanian support, will enable the coalition forces to mobilize the Sunni tribes of eastern Syria and western Iraq, the Kurdish Peshmerga forces and the Iraqi army into a viable force to take on the Islamic State?
Well, as of now, ISIS is still making advances. They say that they have, taken half the city of al-Baghdadi in the Anbar province, though US facilities near that still are they are intact. Clearly, the US was finding the kind of very limited role it was playing in terms of guiding Iraqi or supporting Iraqi forces not very effective. And their army, as you have said, has been asking for some limited amount of forces on the ground to be able to coordinate airstrikes, drone strikes, and to undertake special forces operations, targeted special forces operations where required. But we've also seen in the past that this kind of limited authorization has sometimes tended to lead to mission creep. And that is the concern of the Democrats, many of the liberal Democrats in Congress, who would like the limitations in the resolution moved by the administration to be made more explicit, not to have something vague which could then be interpreted to mean, incremental advances in US deployments.
But Dr. Awwad, isn't mission creep already built into the authorization? Because the new authorization seeks to act against not only ISIS but also against associated action persons. It says individuals and organizations fighting for, on behalf of, or alongside ISIS against the United States or its coalition partners around the world. Does this mean that the battlefield will necessarily expand, and where do you see it expanding, and why are people saying that suddenly there will be some unexplained heart attacks in Qatar?
Well, this is the problem, because this is the hypocrisy. You are fighting IS at one side, but you are supporting Nusra Front on the other side. Nusra Front is very active at the southern border with Syria and Jordan, where the missionaries have been trained. They are just closing their eyes. And even Turkey, which is also saying that it is near to Aleppo, they are closing their eyes on this. Why are you only targeting those specific for the American interest? You, just like American, when they go to Pakistan, they wanted only to attack the Taliban part, that not the one, the Mujahideen against India. It is a very selective kind of policy.
America will fight America's wars. Why should it fight anybody else's wars?
America is run by the rich and the influenced people. It's not run by Ham Admi Party. It is run by those corporate 500 companies which is running the country. So American will not go for your interest.
All democracies are run by the elite.
I don't know how you call it democracy. Is it democracy or deceptions or what kind of things? Is it really democracy?
I call it democracy, but my question to you was, where do you see the war expanding to?
It is expanding.
And what is the role of Qatar in this?
It is now the Syria, it is the secular states which is going to be taking part, then the monarchy will follow. This is a policy. This is a domino factor which they are playing in the Arab world. The monarch will have it. Now Jordan is going to be the forefront after Turkey has failed. Look what the UN Security Council resolution to curb the funding of IS and IS. It is also falling in the hand of the American NATO member, which is Turkey. Now they will attack people in the Saudi Arabia. They will start attacking people in the Gulf, because those people, they have become too old, they have become too rich, and their money they cannot refill it back from the United States. Therefore, they have to be removed from the scene, and that anarchy has to spread to those countries which is funding the United States, and themselves now they're talking it in the open.
Well, on that conspiracy theory note, we need to take a break. We'll be back again in a bit. Don't go away.
Tradition dating back centuries. A cultural heritage that inspires and warms at once. Magic that awes. Rajya Sabha Television brings you events that embrace the wonders of India's classical arts. Conversations with the biggest names in the culture and music. Rajya Sabha Television, Democracy at Work.
कागज पर उतरी रेखाएं, नेता के माथे चिंताएं, ब्यूरोक्रेसी तनी तनी सी, पब्लिक लेकिन खिली खिली सी, लेता है सबकी वो खबर, धारदार है इसकी नजर, नहीं बोलता ये किरदार, लेकिन सब हैं खबरदार, पढ़ने वाले का जीते मन, सिर्फ एक है वही लक्ष्मण। देखिए विरासत में इस बार आर के लक्ष्मण का कार्टून संसार।
Welcome back. We are discussing US President Barack Obama seeking authorization from US Congress for military operations against the Islamic State. Ambassador Shankar, do you think that the 3-year sunset clause will feed the Islamic State propaganda that the American public is timid, that it has a limited appetite for war, and would it encourage therefore the Islamic State leaders, like the Taliban did, to wait out the Americans?
Well, this is one of the dilemmas that the US faces, because they want to engage ISIS militarily and yet at the same time to limit it. This is the criticism that the Republicans are making, that it shows that the US government doesn't have enough resolve or stamina or determination to actually confront ISIS. And this was actually one of, as you pointed out, one of the criticisms when President Obama simultaneously announced the surge of US troops in Afghanistan and a date for withdrawal. So the feeling was that, well, Taliban just has to wait out, till the date for withdrawal is over. So you undermine the surge even as you are actually undertaking it. But then on the other hand, domestic public opinion is really worried about getting sucked into another long-term engagement.
Yeah, we've discussed that. But Dr. Awwad, let me come to you a quick answer on this. How will the US allies in the Middle East react to the 3-year sunset clause? Would they not want a longer-term US involvement? I'm talking about US allies, not Syria.
No, see, the US allies have failed really to topple the Syrian regime, and now they wanted the Americans themselves to help them out in toppling the regime. That is the main aim, objective of it. If you go again and again, it's beyond your program to explain to you really the fundamental of the American policy in the region. But if we do a crash course on the American history of wars, I'm sure all of us will agree, and even your viewers will agree with us, that this is a war created by the American, by the regional forces against the Syrian government.
But okay, but if they pull out after 3 years, do they not leave the sheikdoms of West Asia at the mercy of Iran?
No, they don't. They are wanted to show it as a Sunni Shia. It's not a Sunni Shia fight. It is a fight against all this, the Arab regime in the Arab world, irrespective of your religion. Look, IS have been killing Sunni, Shia, and even the Iraqi government. It might look sectarian to you, but for us, even yesterday, and Anbar and all these provinces, all the tribe leaders, the Sunni, they are joining hand with the government. Why? Because these people are executing and decapitating more than 2,000 tribe Sunni people.
But we heard Ambassador Kalha saying that wherever the Shia forces go, the Sunnis run away.
No,
and you're giving
it's
a different
not the
picture
fact.
altogether.
After IS doing all this killing, even Islamic forces are saying these are non-Islamic. Even the foreign mercenaries going back to the United States, going back to Europe, and that's why they are worried. They don't want them back alive.
Okay. Ambassador Kalha, do you think this authorization will pass congressional scrutiny? We had Master Meera Shankar saying that the Republicans are unhappy, they consider its provisions far too weak, and if it does not pass scrutiny, in the event it doesn't pass scrutiny, then doesn't President Obama go back to the 2001 resolution and keep using that to continue the war?
Obviously, you see, no American president would like to limit his powers. He still has, I think, with enough caveats have been introduced even into the present, situation, for him to act unilaterally. That goes without saying. But please do remember that there is another factor which comes into the whole play, and that is the American relationship with Iran. Now, as it is, their negotiations are proceeding fairly smoothly, as the president himself has clarified on a number of occasions, as far as the nuclear issue is concerned. Now, if that happens and if it comes to a success, then the equation will change on the ground again, because now you will begin to have Iranian influence on your side, and therefore you will have a greater leeway to take care of ISIS. I think the key in the whole situation is the US relationship with Iran. That is a fundamental proposition as far as Middle East is concerned.
Master Meera Shankar, one of the things that the ISIS has done is to spread terrorism westwards, something which we had not seen earlier. But is it not also an eastward threat to countries not only of West Asia, but to countries with huge Muslim populations, say Pakistan, India, countries in the Far East?
Well, you can see that, there has been some signs that, ISIS poses attractions for some Muslims, particularly in parts of Southwest Asia. But, there are also internal organizations here, like say for Afghanistan, you have the Taliban, which has its own version of Islamic rule. So they may not want an outside force to gain preeminence.
Okay.
But it's possible that there could be coordination between the two, because the ultimate objective of many of these groups is to have an Islamic caliphate, stretching all the way up to East Asia.
To Ambassador Meera, what was saying also earlier that from Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Shishan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, all these people have really joined hands in among the mercenaries in Syria.
Okay.
It is a spread of terrorism from Tora Bora to the Moroccan border.
Okay, but also eastwards.
Eastward, yes, it's that.
But we're really running out of time. So, last question to you, Ambassador Kalha. How should India view these military operations against the Islamic State? After all, there have been reports of some recruiters in India sending, young Indian kids to, or encouraging them to go and join the ISIS.
See, if you see the joint statement when President Obama was here, particularly para 40, it talks of ISIS as a terrorist organization, which means that we in India, particularly the government of India, do recognize that the ISIS is a terrorist organization. And therefore, as far as India is concerned, then if you have recognized it as a terrorist organization, then you must act to eliminate.
But they are designating, formally Islamic State is going to be designated a terrorist organization, which is what the news reports say.
No, we have done it. We've in the joint statement with the United States, we've agreed that it is a terrorist organization. But I think there needs to be one caution, and that is that since we have a large number of Indians who live and work in the Middle East, and don't forget there are still 39 Indians who are held captive by ISIS. I don't know whether they are still alive, or perhaps whether they are captive, or perhaps they've passed away. I hope they are still alive, but I think we should keep into account the fate of these people.
Okay. Thank you very much. We've run out of time. I'd like to thank all my guests, Dr. Awwad, Ambassador Ranjit Singh Kalha, Ambassador Meera Shankar, for participating in this discussion. That's all we have for you today. We'll be back again next week as usual. Till then, goodbye and thanks for watching.